Welcome back to the Scaredy Cat Guide, my friends. My name is Jenny, and today we are talking about Pirates of the Caribbean in Disney's Magic Kingdom. So I don't know what it is about the queue to Pirates of the Caribbean that is just the coziest thing in the world to me. I love this ride. It's so nostalgic for me, and I know it is for a lot of other people too. So let's talk about it. This classic ride contains darkness, drops, animatronics, a long ride time, and some scary theming. It's important to note that if anyone in your party is sensitive to any of these elements, it might be something to consider. Now, as a boat-themed dark ride attraction, there is certainly a healthy amount of, well, darkness. Most of the scenes are dimly lit. Some of them have some kind of eerie lighting, kind of adding to the spookiness effect. And it's worth noting that some segments of the ride take place in complete and utter darkness, including the drop, which is definitely something to consider. Now let's talk about that drop. It might surprise you that it's actually one of the smallest in Disney World at only 14 feet. To put that into perspective, the drop on Frozen Ever After is 28 feet long, and the drop on Tiana's Bayou Adventure is a whopping 53 feet. So compared to those two, it's really pretty minor, but it is, it feels a little intense, especially because, like I said before, it does take place in the dark. That darkness can kind of add to a disorienting feeling, think Space Mountain or Cosmic Rewind. It's really a kind of recurring theme that I've noticed, that if you can't see where you're going, it can feel very disorienting, and it can make some of those thrill elements seem more intense. Now let's talk animatronics. It might not come as a shock to you that there are a shocking 125 animatronics on this attraction. Now, animatronics might not bother you, but they, definitely can be kind of uncanny, kind of shifty, and the ones on this attraction are the older models. They've been around for a long time. They can be a little shaky and jittery, and, just depending on the day, they can be a little creepier than normal. Now, the ride time for this attraction is actually longer than average. It comes in at around 8 minutes and 30 seconds, which puts it on the longer side for Disney attractions. This is definitely a slow, meandering boat ride. It takes you through the show scenes at a crawl. I know for me, as a claustrophobic rider, sometimes the really slow rides can just feel, kind of confining, and it leaves you wondering how much longer there is and how long it's going to take you to get to the unloading platform, and it can make me go a little crazy. If that's not a problem for you, then great, but definitely something to consider if you are claustrophobic. Now let's talk about the spooky factor. There is definitely some scary theming on this ride. It is not terrible. It's not straight up horror or anything like that. But we do have some spooky skeletons. They're honestly a little scary even to me at 30 years old. I'm not afraid to admit that. Now, aside from the spooky skeletons, it is important to note that the first half of the ride is definitely spookier in tone than the second half, although the second half does have its fair share of pillaging and plundering and just, other pirate activities. Now, aside from that, there are also some loud noises on this ride. Of course, as pirates, there is some shouting, some loud sound design, some cannon fire, loud blasts and splashing, some bright lights. So if you or anyone in your party is really sensitive to that kind of sensory overload, it might be something to think about. We also have some piped in smells on this ride, most notably the burning village. You get kind of a smoky fire smell. We also have the auction scene where we have a sweet kind of fruit-like smell. It's really not abrasive, but it's there. And then throughout the ride, there is also kind of a lingering smell of rum. Surprise, surprise. Now, the ride vehicles consist of one large boat with 6 rows that seat about 3 to 4 people per row. Now, this does make the ride very fast loading and unloading, which is wonderful for our claustrophobic friends. But like I said, the long ride time might make up for that. Now that you have all the facts, let's ride this thing. I don't know if it's the smell of the bromine water, the sound effects, the dim lighting, I have no idea, but for some reason, this is just a happy place for me, and I am so excited to ride it with you guys, so let's hop on. You'll find the entrance to Pirates of the Caribbean in Adventureland. Once you enter the queue, you'll find yourself in a large outdoor area with beautiful vaulted ceilings and open archways. Now, this particular section is not claustrophobic, which is wonderful. It feels very open, lots of fresh air, but it is worth noting that if you are there in the summertime, it can be hot. Now, in this area, the line simply snakes back and forth until you enter the indoor portion of the queue. Once inside, you'll find a dungeon-like space with dim lighting and lanterns aplenty. You'll find a few different show scenes with cannons and other pirate-related props as you enter little offshoots of the queue and then come back to the main area where you can see these beautiful arches. Now, even though the ceilings are pretty high for most of this queue, it can feel a little bit confining. There are no windows. It definitely has that dungeon-like feel. It can feel like you're underground. It is very dim. The sound design can make it feel kind of spooky. You know, a few things that you should think about before hopping into this queue. Like I said, you will pass by several different pirate show scenes. You'll find cells, you'll find ropes and chains and cannons, things like that. It is worth noting that this particular area does have some benches and seating, so if any of your party would like to sit down at any point, there is a good little spot for this about midway through the queue. And then of course it is back into the creepy dark dungeon. You'll briefly pass by this little area where you can actually see the loading platform before carrying on into more dark, dimly lit hallways. The line snakes around some more, you pass by a few more piratey show scenes before you find yourself on the ramp to the loading platform. You'll get a pretty good view of the ride vehicles here, so you can really see what you're getting into. Of course, like every ride, you can always tell a cast member at the front if you decide not to ride last minute. It is not a big deal. They will escort you where you need to go. You do not have to get on the ride if you decide you are not ready to once you get up there. From here, you'll be sorted into a lane and prepared to get on the ride vehicle. Now, as the ride sets off, you will pretty immediately find yourself in a cavernous area with blue lighting and the ghostly echoes I was talking about earlier of dead men tell no tales. It's definitely spooky, this part of the ride. This first half is certainly scarier than the rest of it, and this is where you will come across the spooky skeletons. Now, they do not move at all, which is nice. You'll see them first on the left side of your boat, and even though they're not really in your face, they definitely are scary, at least in my opinion. Then to your right, you'll see another skeleton who seems to be driving a pirate ship, and he is actually steering the wheel. So he's moving a little bit, but he, again, is not in your face. You honestly could just turn your head if it's too spooky or too spooky for somebody in your boat. Not a big deal. And afterwards is where you will find the big drop. There is also a skull and crossbones here that flashes its eyes very brightly. It's brief, kind of like a lightning strike, and unfortunately I didn't catch it on camera this time. But just so you know, it is there right before you go down the drop. Now, like I said, it's really not a big drop at all. It's only 14 feet, and as the signs say outside, it is very likely you will get wet. At the bottom of the drop, you'll find this amazing pirate ship show scene. This is probably the most sensory overload area of the entire ride, where there is shouting and cannon fire. You actually have these cannon blasts splashing on either side of your boat, which again, can get you wet. When I took my daughter on this for the first time, she's 4 years old, this was the part that really did her in, and she will not go on pirates anytime soon. It definitely can just feel a little intense after that quiet, spooky beginning of the ride. Now, once you move on from the pirate ship, you will come across your first show scene with the village. You'll find tons of animatronics in this area doing various things. We'll even find our favorite, Captain Jack Sparrow, at multiple points on this ride. And honestly, the show scenes from this point onward are not very spooky. They're a little more friendly. Definitely not as scary as the beginning of the ride. Of course, we have our famous auction scene, and we'll pass by our girl Red, my favorite, of course, before we pass under an archway and end up in another scene showing some piratey pillaging and plundering. Now, after this scene comes the burning village scene. Now, this one isn't really as intense as it sounds. The flames aren't in your face. It doesn't really feel like anything's burning around you. There is that smoky smell, but there's no heat or anything like that that would make it a really scary scene. Of course, with the famous song in the background, it makes for a pretty easygoing vibe. Finally, we'll come to the last scene of the ride, where we find the pirates trying to escape their jail cells with a very unhelpful puppy dog. To our left, we will see Captain Jack Sparrow in his treasure room. Good for him. And before we know it, we will find ourselves back at the unloading platform and ready to disembark. Once exiting the ride vehicle, you will find yourself going up an escalator-like ramp, and after a short ride upwards, you'll find yourself out of the gift shop. And there you have it. Please let me know what you think about Pirates of the Caribbean in the comments section below. Do you find it as cozy as I do? Maybe it's not as nostalgic to everybody else, but I just love this ride so much. Of course, if you want to come along for more ride reviews just like this one, if you're an anxious rider like I am, please subscribe, leave a like, share with your friends. I am so excited to be finally making these videos for you guys, and I couldn't do it without you. So thank you so much for your support and all the love, and I will see you guys in the next one.